I'm trying. I keep on saying start. It keeps on throwing me out.
Um,
I don't know why. Let's see. All right. Well, you guys start, and I'll continue to play with this. How's that? Can you see me now?
I did before we saw you. Your picture did come up before.
All right. Don't worry about me. Well,
Oh,
I'll
wait.
figure it out.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
So in
Dr.
terms of
Lim.
the order, Ms. Bora or Ms. Alvarez,
Yes.
if we could start with Mr. Barandika and the athletic update, and then he can run back. We have a game going on right now, and I just want to make sure he can get over there, without
Absolutely,
having to
absolutely.
be away
How
from
are you
it too
feeling, Mr. Brandick? Are you feeling better now?
Much better. I endured the flu last week. I was down and out for 2 days, unfortunately.
Dr. Lehman has shared that.
there's a flu going around.
Yeah, but I'm back, so that's good.
Okay, good news.
So I wanted to talk real quick about ice hockey in particular. We're in a situation right now where, based off the numbers in the last couple of years, we have had some decline in the in the amount of athletes that we've had in the program. Right now, for next year, I'm exploring the possibility of us entering into what we call a co-op, which is where we would essentially join another school in order to be able to have a program, as the numbers that we expect for next year will not really allow us to have or to be able to run our own program. So we have about 11 student athletes that we expect to come back next year. One of the problems that we have is that about four of them are goalies by position. So really kind of puts us in a situation where we, again, based off the amount of goalies that we have and the amount of players that we have, it wouldn't be realistic for us to be able to run a program. So I have done a little bit of research, reached out to see what options we have. Hillsborough is a school that matches up pretty well with us. They're also a Group 4 school. And essentially they need what we have a lot of, which is, again, goalies. And based off the type of athletes that we have been a very competitive program. So I would want to match us up with a school that is also obviously competitive, as our student athletes are used to, used to good competition. Last year we were GMC champions. Tomorrow we play for the GMC championship in ice hockey again. So I know that, our team would want to find obviously a good program to kind of match up with. So I have had some preliminary conversations with Hillsborough. What we would essentially need is we would need the conferences to approve a change, as the Hillsborough team is part of what we call a Skyline Conference, and we're part of the GMC Conference. The Skyline Conference is more competitive. So if we did search to do this, it would mean we would essentially be joining basically their team. The way that it would work is I would have conversations with the athletic director to set up somewhat of an agreement of what would happen with coaches. Fees like ice fees would be shared between both programs. Again, depending on how we kind of work that agreement. Based off the way that kind of things look right now, we would request most likely to keep two coaches and transportation being funded through our district, and then we would be able to split things like the ice rink, which is the most expensive piece of ice hockey. They usually played out of Pro Skate, which is actually in South Brunswick, which is nice for us because it would mean that our team would have to go to a closer ice rink than when we actually go right now. Right now we play out of JSA, Jersey Shore Arena. So again, it is a little further away. So the switch would be nice for us, as our student athletes and families would be able to travel to a closer ice rink. Right now, the only thing that I'm asking is just, again, I wanted to kind of put it out to the board so that you guys can think about it. The process that I need to follow is I need to submit an application to the state SIAA by April. So I'm going to sit down with the other school to kind of hash out more of the details to then come to the board in March with a formal, somewhat of an agreement for the board, hopefully to consider approving for us. But I'll take any questions as to, kind of how the process works and, all those types of things.
I have one question on that, Mr. Brandick. So I know you've done your research. Is there any possibility that we could get bidders coming into the freshman year? Like, is there a way to backtrack to say we we make all the arrangements with Hillsborough, but then next year we have a team, or the year after we have a team. So what happens if we do have a team?
Yeah, so again, our coach, Mr. Felice, is pretty in tune with, what the numbers look like, for the next couple of years. Typically, when you enter a co-op, the state does approve the co-op for a 2-year period. After that 2-year period, we would have to renew those contracts. So basically, let's just say if we enter into a co-op and the state were to approve it, we would be essentially locked in for 2 years. I don't think our numbers would change drastically between next year and the year after that, especially with some of the upperclassmen that would again graduate next year. So I don't think that as of right now we foresee that changing. After the 2-year period, we would absolutely reevaluate it. And again, with how early we're always looking into the budget, I would do my due diligence to make sure that I'm looking in for seeing, to see kind of where we may fall, to see before I would even apply for a second co-op. If there's no need for it, then we would absolutely rather fund our own program.
I don't have any other questions. Anybody else? Please go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Brandon.
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
Just in terms of cost, would this be costing the district more money, the same, or?
Nope. So we would be saving. Definitely. Again, let's just say for the ICE, for example, our current contract right now for ICE, I believe, is around 36,000 is what we pay alone just for the ICE. In this case, let's just say we keep 16 student athletes in the program. We would divide the cost and have like a per pupil cost. And then let's just say if I have 10 student athletes, and we say it's, $2,000 per student athletes, we would only pay, the other school for that. So we would be saving significantly on the amount of ice time that we pay, as we would be essentially splitting that cost.
How many students are there currently on the team?
Right now we have, I want to say about 16-ish, 16, 17.
Okay. And what's the maximum number?
There is no specific maximum number. Some schools carry, enough athletes to be able to run a varsity and a JV program.
Mhm.
Last year we were able to have a varsity and a JV program, but our numbers again came down a lot from last year to this year. So this year we only ran a varsity program, and now unfortunately next year we're running into a situation where we won't be able to run a varsity program.
Okay, thank you.
So this is best of both the worlds. We continue to keep the program, but our costs will come down.
Correct. Our costs would come down. The only thing that I have had a conversation with Dr. Lehman about is the current contract that we have with the ice rink does have 1 more year in it. However, they are also the same owners of Pro Skate, which is where we would be essentially requesting to go. So in the interim between now and whenever I submit a formal proposal to the board, I would also have that conversation with the ice company, just to make sure what would happen with that last year of the contract. But again, we would be essentially getting into a new contract with the same company. But I will have those conversations in order to present everything to the board all at once.
Anybody else? Any questions? Thank you so much, Mr. Brandiga.
Awesome. Thank you.
Dr. Lehman, who would you like to
Sure.
take?
Why don't we do the curriculum document? So Ms. Gasco has 1 curriculum document.
Ms. Gasco, all yours.
We have to unmute yourself, Ms. Gasco.
Now I'm good, right? Okay. I'm out of practice since COVID days. I have 2 outstanding curriculum documents. One is going to be for tonight. What happened is that I've had a teacher that was out on maternity leave, so she wasn't able to finish it. And when she came back, she finished it up for us. And it is the Dynamics of Algebra 2. The standards changed to 2023, so we had to update our documents. But once you got to the Algebra 1s and the Algebra 2s, there weren't too many changes, just a couple mini tweaks to it. They de-emphasized some of the probability and statistics, which is good for a class like Dynamics of Algebra 2 because that was difficult for them. And another one of the major changes, which it would look something tiny in the document to you guys, is that when you're graphing exponential and logarithmic functions, they want it where you're showing intercepts and end behavior. And in the past, in the 2016 standards, there was an expectation that there would also be trigonometric functions showing period, midline, and amplitude. And that was very complicated. So I think they realized that Algebra 2 is a very, very jam-packed curriculum. So they kind of tweaked it a little bit. Some of the changes that we made to the dynamics. Now, understand this is a course for students that struggle and they need this course for graduation. We have added in a unit that we were doing anyway, but was not actually officially in the document, and it is to start out with factoring. While it is technically an Algebra 1 topic, it needs a review, and it is something they absolutely need to have mastered in order to be able to go further with the course. So that unit was created from scratch, just so if a teacher were to start teaching this, they would have that as a guideline as to where to go and where to start. The following units, 2 through 7, the standards were updated. The cross-curricular all had to be updated. So it includes 2020 career readiness and life literacy and key skills. There are in the cross-curricular, the New Jersey 2023 language arts standards. Those were updated along with the math. There's some critical thinking and problem solving into the computer science area. The New Jersey science and engineering practices were included. And then the English language development also had there. Some of the few things that got added were having the learning plan was actually much more detailed. So again, so somebody new to the course would have more ideas of what to do. One of the things that we had to add in terms of the standards was explicit examples of climate change. They did in the new standards give us examples to use, so those were embedded into it. The technology was double checked and updated to make sure that they were examples that could be used. One of the big ones is Desmos that we have been using when it's appropriate. It doesn't always have to get used, but they have some great lesson plans and activities that can be embedded. And then tier 1, 2, and 3 in terms of vocabulary were added in. So again, there's not major changes that were to it. It was basically tweaks so that it actually works for the students the way it should be. And then all of the standards have been changed going through. So, and again, the technology, we're really trying to infuse potential technology that can be used, especially with the inclusion of iPads that we have. Does anybody have any questions?
I may have a very layman, dumb question. So this is different from Algebra 2?
So the standards for Algebra 2 are the same in terms of what has to get covered, but the way it is taught and the level of rigor and the level of abstractness has changed. So this is the lower level of the courses. So this is meant for students that really, really struggle. So you're not going to have as complicated of problems. You're not going to have the detail go into as much abstractness. It's a difficult course for students and it's needed for graduation. So the 3 different levels, it's not a matter of just having harder problems and more homework. It's really the depth of the way the understanding goes into it and the amount of detail that goes into the abstractness. So this is more the basic level, basic problems. You wouldn't teach this level to all students because it wouldn't prepare them for the higher level classes to the same degree.
But the students that take this class are identified before they start Algebra 2. So they're only taking dynamics of Algebra 2 and not Algebra 2. Am I understanding that right?
So they would, the more typical track, right, and students move up and down a little bit, they might have struggled in 8th grade Algebra 1, which is pre-algebra. And the program of studies has guidelines as to what to go through. Then they might go into Algebra 1AB, which we've talked before, and which gives them Algebra 1 every day so that they can try to get the foundation. If they're still having difficulty learning math and it's something that's difficult for them, they would most likely go into dynamics of geometry, then dynamics of Algebra 2. So it is the most discrete, most basic level of the concepts. Am I explaining that right? You would, and then like if it's college prep still, but it would be college prep for students that really struggle with math. So it's to get them so that they understand the concepts and they can learn it, but they might not be able to go through and do the hardest of the types of problems.
Understood. I wasn't even aware that we had that sort of a class there, but
Yeah.
you started off by saying you have 2 curriculum documents, but there's only one attachment, right?
Yes, so I
you
said I have 2 outstanding for the year, and the next
Okay.
one is literally done. I have to review it. That one's done by a different teacher who is about to go out on maternity leave. So hers is going to be in for review and should be up for the next time around.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
So-
Anybody else, please go ahead.
Yeah, I looked at the curriculum, and I'm always, as I mentioned before, I think it's a great document, but the document itself is dealing with higher level. It's still moving the taxonomy of learning. It's still moving from the very, very low level all the ways up to, I guess, analysis and synthesis. Correct? I mean, at least that's what when
Yes,
I read.
they have to be able to. So they have to be able to transfer the concepts to different equations,
Right.
but they're not going to be the hardest of the problem. So the state requires that we cover all the standards. So all the standards have to be covered. It is the degree of difficulty of the problems that they're going to practice, and it's going to be the way it's going to be taught too. There's not going to necessarily go into the proof of every type of problem that they have and why. It's going to be an explanation of why, maybe a visual of it, and then they're going to go through there. So, algebra 2, you can cover the same type of material, let's just say exponential growth, with any different types of level of problems. The question is going to be how abstract and how difficult are you going to make the problems?
Yeah, because when I looked at the curriculum, and again, when I just look at it, my initial response, and I came away from it understanding that it was a program for kids who are having difficulty with math, but yet some of the ways things were stated in the curriculum itself, I'm not sure they can reach those levels, even though I know I understand what the attempt is. Believe me, I do understand what you're trying to do. I understand how certain kids just have major issues with math. And so you're trying to get them to understand it from a different perspective. I have to assume that. So, go ahead, please.
So it might be that some of the problems that you would expect students to do independently in a regular algebra 2, or especially in an honors algebra 2, you might work with them and guide them and give them guided help in terms of how to see how it's applied. So they're still going to see some of that in terms of the more difficult ones, but in terms of getting them for what they retain, you're going to make sure that you're going to give a level of problem that they can understand.
Yeah.
We have to still cover all of the standards. We can't cut out some of those. So I'm not sure if the question is, you think some of the content is too difficult. Some of the content is dictated by the state. We have to cover it. It's just a matter of how much guidance we give them in terms of trying to get them through the problems. It might be a problem that takes less steps to do than a more complicated one for another level class.
No, I do understand exactly what the attempt is, and I commend you for trying that and for trying to get kids to, in fact, take an algebra 2 class.
Yes.
So if you can move kids who have some reluctancy, I think that's great.
So I can tell you the teacher that wrote it, she actually currently teaches it and has taught the course in the past. So she has firsthand experience of putting in examples that she knows has worked in her class and things that she's done. So this isn't really done in theory. This is actually in practice what's being done.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Ghazala? Oh, okay.
Sorry, my mute button was stuck.
Okay.
Anyone else? Any questions? All right. We thank you so much, Ms. Gasco. I think we can move on to the next item. Dr. Lehman, what would you like to take up?
Let's do the summer programming update. So that's Mr. Moralda and Ms. Gasco as well.
Excellent.
Thank
All
you.
yours.
Dr. Lehman, can you hear me okay? Okay. Good evening, everyone. We are happy to present the beginning of our course catalog for the upcoming summer programs that we're excited to continue with this year. I know it sounds crazy given the fact that it's not even halfway through February yet, and that it's about to snow, but we are ahead of schedule, and for very purposeful reasons, because we have made some adjustments to our program that we think our community will be excited to get their hands around as they begin to start thinking about what they're going to be doing with their children over the summer. We historically, our summer program has been limited to enrichment services and remediation services. And we feel like those programs have been delivered with fidelity, and every year we've added programs, and the students and these programs have aligned directly with our curriculum and our co-curricular activities throughout the district in a variety of content areas. And every year in our after action review, one of the areas and opportunities for growth in our SWOT analysis always tended to gravitate back towards the possibilities for our high school students. And this year we're excited because we've taken a giant step in that direction. It's something that we've been looking at for a couple of years now. And Mrs. Gasco and Dr. Higgins at the high school, along with Dr. Lehman's office, we've finally been able to put together a plan where we can offer advancement credit for our students here in town at the high school. Historically, our students have had to leave the district to go obtain credit at a variety of locations that are approved by our district, but now they will need to look no further than our very own high school. The program we will be offering this year will be geometry and honors geometry, and it'll be open to students that have completed their freshman year. So this is in accordance of what we've been offering in our district, but now we will be offering it here at home, delivered by our teachers, aligned with our curriculum, and we will continue to deliver our assessments to obtain credit. These courses will be 120 hours, which is our requirement to obtain 5 credits and for advancement purposes. And we are excited to be able to do this. We think it's going to provide significant utility to the students and the high school as a whole, particularly now that students will have the opportunity to partake in our math sequence, which we're very proud of. And now we will no longer have to farm out our students to other locations. And the district will reap all of the benefits of this programmatic evolution. Our curriculum will be obviously modified and compacted, but this will be something that we will do through the math department in the spring and then ongoing throughout the summer as our teachers work throughout the months. Our program will run from July 7th through August 8th, and we will operate from 8 to 1 throughout the day. And again, this is in direct alignment with what students throughout the state have been doing in this particular type of programming. We know that these types of decisions will parents have to make pretty quickly as they start to think about how they want to approach summer learning. And we're excited to be able to turn this on, and we're going to be releasing registration protocols and procedures to the public, hopefully by the end of the month, maybe sooner. And we're looking forward to seeing how this goes. And we're very optimistic about what it's going to do as far as supporting our students as they continue to advance in their ability to consume mathematics instruction. That's pretty much the description of the program. All the information available to the public will be publicized via direct email to eligible students, also publicly on our various publication outlets. Students, if the first stop for students, and we'll talk all about this in our public communications, but obviously has to take place through our guidance office. And this is exactly how we have operated such procedures in the past, because guidance can then work with the math department and verify eligibility. And then once we realize the student is eligible, they'll be able to enroll in our programs. And all of these procedures will be made public once we're ready to turn this on, like I said, which will be very shortly. Before I continue, obviously, I'll pause here and see if anyone has any questions about this particular program that we're excited to offer.
I have one question, but before that, I want to congratulate everybody. This is beyond exciting. I have been a strong proponent of it for years now, back when I was on that side of the public forum, and has been a dream ever since I've been on the curriculum committee. So thank you. I'm so happy to hear that this is going to finally happen. The only question I had was the eligibility criteria that you just mentioned. So the freshmen going into sophomore year would be able to take this over the summer. Are our criteria similar to what our neighboring districts are going to, or already have? Are we going to allow the students that can be taken by Petty or South Brunswick or any other school district to take the program with us, or our criteria is going to be more stricter or more rigid?
So you're talking about Monroe students, correct?
Yes, Monroe students taking the course in Monroe. Yes.
So one of the things Dr. Higgins and I talked about was making it so that there was equity for everybody. So what has been allowed in the past for other districts or for other places, and students can still go to other ones if they want to, but we're going to be able to offer it in-house. And to be quite honest with you, I've had some of my own teachers be the teachers at Petty. And so we know what we need and what we want to. So it's not that I'm going to decline somebody from taking a level they want to. I will have conversations with, are you sure you want to take, let's just say, an honors level where the recommendation might not be? Because I can give statistics. Like when I had last year, I had 19 students take regular geometry outside. Most at Petty, but not all at Petty. 75% of those students were able to move on. They were in level that they were comfortable with. They learned the material. They got an 80 or higher in their course. They got an 80 or higher on our final. With the honors geometry, the statistics were not as good, but they were stretching themselves. So some did make it. I had about 30% that made it. In that case, I have the numbers right here. 13 students take it. But so to give you an idea, I had 32 students taking a level of geometry. To be fair, I'm going to let them choose the level that they want to, but they're only going to take one final. So it's going to be the same identical criteria. They will need to get an 80 or higher in the course. And that will include a summative assessment, but they're also going to come back and take our final on the last day. That's going to be one of the things as well, and get an 80 or higher on that. So that way, if you were taking it at an outside place or you're taking here, it's the same thing. But understand that this, the research shows that with retention, if you're learning something in a 4 or 5 week time period, you're going to have retained most of it. So that's why getting an 80 is not something that's out of the range. I had 75% of the students last year actually go through and be successful. And even that 3 of them didn't finish the course. So I don't know how serious they were about it. So those are counted in the ones that didn't make it. It'll be the same exact idea, but you should be able to learn something in 5 weeks and be able to retain it. The retention curves usually are as time goes on, that's where you lose more and more of it. So taking a whole course over 10 months is harder to have remembered everything all the way through. I think it's going to be very, very successful. I really do. We've worked it out. So I was working with Mr. Meralda, and we figured out the time period that worked. It matches right up to when I can give the final literally a few days later. So they'll have time to review and go over it, and they should be able to take it and go from there. It is going to be, though, the type of program where there's going to be attendance required. So to meet the state requirements, they will only be able to be absent twice. And that is along the lines of what's happened with other programs in the past, when schools do that as well. Petty offers it over 6 weeks. We're offering it over 5 weeks. I think we have 5 hours a day. They might have 4.5. So it's a very similar type of a setup going through. So I just like the idea that the level of rigor will be of the rigor that we know of what we expect for our students. And I think the success rate is going to be very good. It's not going to be a guarantee that everybody makes it through. They're still going to have to do the work and put the work into it. But I do think it's going to be very successful.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be very successful if we're going to, allow the kids to do what they were doing outside of the district in the district.
Yes.
It's actually going to be double successful, because we're also going to make that money as a school district that other school districts are making off of us. So congratulations again. I don't have any more questions, but anybody else on the committee has any questions, please go ahead.
And I think offering one course of each right now, I think is sufficient, because if you look at the numbers from last year, I had 19 of regular geometry and 13 going to honors geometry. So that gives us some leeway to go through that. So I think it's a very fair start. And I think that we might get more people wanting to take them again. There is going to be a limit, but I do believe it's going to be worth. To give you an idea with the setup in terms of the approval process is so that I just make sure that somebody is signing up for a course. In the past, it's been that it's the appropriate number of hours. I know that's going to be the case for us, but also that it's an appropriate course, meaning that they're coming from Algebra 1 to take geometry. So if somebody wants and asked to take Algebra 2, they would have had to have taken geometry first, because that's the progression going through. I don't want to approve somebody going off to pre-calc that didn't have the Algebra 2. So it's really just kind of a check and balance, just to make sure you're taking the right next sequential course and go from there. So
Great start. Good luck to everybody that's involved in this.
I'm so excited because this is something that I think we're starting it out the right way so that we can really set it up with success.
Yes, good luck. Anybody else, any questions? Mr.
Can I just
Maraldo,
make
you-
a general comment?
Sure.
As anything we do in the summer, we have a potential price structure. Again, we have to finalize that in a payment method. But we would not run something that we wouldn't minimally break even. So I don't want anybody to think that we're going to run something that we're going to have to put a tremendous amount of money out. The break even figures here are pretty low in terms of student enrollment. So based on historical students that are interested in taking geometry, we have confidence that we would definitely meet our minimum numbers. But those are the things we'll finalize in the next week or two in terms of the format of payment, as well as minimum numbers to run the sections and things.
I mostly agree with you, Dr. Lehman, but I do know that this is an additional, it's an alternate way revenue generation idea as well for the district. So I'm sure you guys will come up with the right price point that our students and their parents will not feel bad because they're putting it back into our own district, money that they were willing to pay to another school district. So and I'm glad that we're having this conversation, even though you might be making that announcement a month or so down the lane, Mr. Maralda. It's a public meeting, and I'm hoping that the word gets out and people, know that this option exists this year.
So when they put in for the approval, it's a Google form, and that is going to go on the site as soon as we get everything finalized. As Mr. Maralda said, we're going to do it as soon as possible. With the potential snow coming tomorrow, probably not tomorrow, but we're hoping, let's say by next week at some time. I have told parents that have asked me about it that the approval form has not been put on the site yet because I have been waiting for this, to be quite honest with you, because I didn't want to tell somebody to sign up for a program and them then find out, oh, by the way, we're offering it. Out of the choices, there will be an MTHS at our school for geometry and honors geometry. And then there will be other schools listed. And then there's an option other that they can show me another course that I can prove. If they meet the state criteria, I allow it. I just have experience with some programs being more successful with students than others with ours. So I do kind of like to have that. But this way, it's all on a Google form. The parents give me their emails. We have their phone numbers. We have all the information we need. And that way, they'll get the approval. They'll then get the approval for the geometry or honors geometry. And then we will send it off to Mr. Maralda. So he'll have it set up for the similar way that he has the payment plan for his summer enrichment program. And they'll be able to set it up that way. So I'll just make sure they're in the right course, and we'll go first come, first serve with that.
Just curious, Dr. Lehman, would this need board approval?
So we're running this under our summer programming umbrella. So this is just an additional course we're going to offer. We already have a curriculum document, right? So we just have to, the same concepts will be taught over the 5 weeks. We'll just have to address the pacing, right? Unit timing and things like that. So there's no specific, new document to be approved or anything like that. We're just, keeping you in the loop. And again, in terms of fiscal responsibility and things like that, this is not something that isn't going to cost us, it's not going to cost us anything that we won't cover with the revenue that we'll bring in.
Enrollment.
Sounds good. All right, Mr. Maralda, you can take it over again.
Thank you. And that was, I'm glad Dr. Lehman brought that up because I had failed to mention that this would be a tuition-based program, obviously. And we will, our catalog, and I'll continue with the presentation, our catalog, which is going to look similar to what you received in your executive content this afternoon, just a little bit more tailored to students and parents. We'll have all of that outlined, including costs or fees and things like that. So just moving along away from the high school, we are going to reboot the enrichment programs that we have been historically running throughout the district, which range everywhere from computer science to the culinary arts and fine arts, with a few additions and programmatic devolutions. So a lot of the feedback we've received from parents, particularly our younger students, was that the time and availability of the programs was just too brief, and the kids were left wanting a little bit more. That also, we received some feedback from our early childhood education program that the parents were looking for some sort of summer enrichment for students approaching kindergarten. So what we're going to introduce this year will be an early childhood enrichment preschool program, which is going to be an extension of our already existing Falcon's Nest preschool at the Monroe Township High School. It'll be governed by both in fact, our two teachers, and we will continue to leverage our student teachers into the summer. So what we'll do is we'll run a 5-hour preschool throughout the month of July, and we will lace the existing enrichment programs through that preschool. So culinary, art, and STEM, going down all the way into the preschool level, and it'll be all the same instructors in the same hallway as everybody. So it's just an expansion of our existing program into the preschool. So our youngest learners throughout the district will have an opportunity to learn alongside our teachers in our facilities throughout the summer. And this will be a longer program than we've ever run before. So it'll give the parents an opportunity to, fulfill whatever needs they have as far as getting their child access to legitimate programming, standards aligned programming. And it'll be a nice little expansion for the siblings that we have to tell they have to wait a few years before they can come to our programs. So we're excited about that. We've also revamped and that's going to be called the Falcon's Nest Summer Academy. We've also revamped our K-2 program, which had been historically limited to 2-hour sessions. What we're doing this year, and mainly because the two instructors that ran it are also two varsity coaches in the district, we're calling it Summer of STEM MMA Mind and Motion Academy. No, it's not mixed martial arts, although we've talked about it. It's basically what we're going to be doing is blending STEM education with athletics, leadership, and team building. And it's going to be a kind of a hybrid program where in the morning they'll do some athletic fitness and some team building. They're also going to learn some team sports. And then in the second session, after a half-hour break, we'll get into some structured STEM modules. So again, a longer learning experience for the parents, for our youngest learners. But again, it'll be laced with curricularly aligned and programmatically aligned learning experiences, all under the leadership of our certified instructors. So we're excited about what we've done to our early childhood education program. We've been talking a lot about pre-K through K learning over the last couple really years now. And, we don't have to necessarily wait around for everything else to fall into place. So we're going to continue to address learning at that age throughout the summer and in a meaningful way. So we're excited to offer that to the Monroe and Jamesburg community, but also members of the region that may be interested in looking for that sort of thing. It's been brought to our attention that there's very limited opportunities for curricularly driven early childhood enrichment over the summer. So we're hoping to fulfill that need for some of our community members. The only other addition that we're excited to bring to the summer will be our first very casual exploration into the world of pre-medical and biotechnology learning. And so what Ms. Drust and I have been looking at this school year are ways that we could start to take a look at pre-medical programs, biotechnological programs that fit naturally into our existing curriculum, but also extend beyond it. And we have some opportunities. We've been having some nice conversations with the staff. Many of our staff are currently being trained in some of these content areas. We know that the nature of content and nuanced science, especially in the older levels, is heading in that direction. And a lot of our students here in Monroe are looking for that type of learning. We've been surveying the community over the last couple months, gauging interest in this area, and shocker, it's like asking people if they want their taxes to be lower. The response has been very favorable to look at these types of programmings. And again, for all types of learners. And so we're going to start it this summer. We're not doing this in lieu of something. We're doing this alongside of everything we already have. And the beauty of these summer programs is that we can bring in our teachers, train them, test out this content meaningfully with their own students. And then, as we've been doing with computer science and robotics over the last couple of years, we are naturally, patiently, and authentically embedding it into the daily learning of the school day, which is a nice way to not burden our teachers and overwhelm them, but also get them excited about this 21st century content that continues to be, our expectations are these students need to get this content right now at early age, but we can't do it by replacing what's already there. So we have to find ways to embed it naturally. And the supervisors have been awesome in helping us use the summer program, leverage the summer program and some of these enrichment programs to get this done. And you've seen it in some of the new curricular programs that have just kind of popped up over the last couple of years. So we're happy to continue to expand into the summer. And we're way ahead of schedule this year, which we're excited about. And I know, we've been saying soon, but we know I can say with confidence that everything will be in place by the end of the month, as far as a course catalog and accessibility for parents to begin thinking about what they want to do with their summer. We don't anticipate on raising any prices for our programs this year. Again, these programs, we want to be accessible for our program, for our students and community, but we also have to make sure at a financial responsibility that we don't incur any costs to the district. So that's something that we're very proud of, that we've been able to do successfully. So every year we've added more. This year we fulfilled our goal of doing something for the high school, and we're going to continue to go. This is going to get bigger every year, and we're excited about the opportunity. So the executive content has everything I just described, but we will be producing information for the public very shortly.
This is all incredible. You've covered the entire spectrum of student ages, and there's so much exciting stuff there. Quick question for the preschool through second grade is where we are doing the longer 5-hour sessions.
That's correct.
And everything else is the way we've done in the previous summers, the enrichment classes.
That's correct. What we've done, we mentioned last year also, or last fall in the SWOT analysis, that one of the opportunities that we had was more strategic scheduling. So what we do, like for example, if we run a 3 to 5 art program in the AM, we'll do a 3 to 5 STEM program in the PM. So being very purposeful in our scheduling. So if a parent wanted to take advantage of the full program, that becomes much more convenient and plausible. So
I'm super excited about the new addition on the pre-medical and medical track. You guys just seem to be outdoing yourself every year, so I'm very excited. Congratulations, looks great. Good luck on the the publicizing part of it. Anybody else on the board has any questions, or committee members? No comments, no questions. Well, Mr. Maralta, thank you so much. Good luck to everybody on your team. It's going to be a great summer. Very exciting summer. Dr. Lehman, I think we only have the policy documents left now, right? I don't see Dr. Higgins here. Are you going to be covering both of them?
Yeah, I can definitely go over the acceptable use of generative AI, and then we can go through the other one, and I can show you that we took some feedback both about the elementary, middle, and high school in terms of the structure of the policy as well. I think it reads a little clearer, that other one. It was convoluted because it would talk about one thing in other sections, and it was a little messy. So I think we cleaned it up. Makes a lot more sense to read through. Yeah,
I did read through. There's still some issues, but let's tackle the AI policy first, and then we can jump into the discussion for 5440.
Yep. So since our last meeting, Mr. Weiss and I worked through the policy and cleaned up some of the, I would call it some ambiguity that we came through. There's some repetitive concepts, but the structure remains the same. Like the first page and a half is board related, right? It's an overview, kind of a top down kind of snapshot of basically AI's around. We as a district acknowledge it's going to be around. We'd love to leverage it. We support leveraging it, but we also want to make sure we do it responsibly. So that's really the first section. And then there's a student section and a staff section. Embedded in those two sections, again, are very similar thread. It's about verifying sources, using it responsibly. There's a very clear element to this policy about student privacy and staff privacy, using data, not copy and pasting any potential unique identifiers, everything from an obvious student name or social security number or credit card number, like all the obvious pieces, but we put them in here for clarity and safety's sake, about just the use and safety related to AI. And there's also an element here about academic integrity in terms of verifying your source, citing your sources. AI is not a primary resource at all. It needs to be verified, needs to be identified and cited if used, and that's the expectation for both staff and students. So I think it hits from a board level and from a district level, it hits the hot spots. Where we're going to move from here is we have pockets of staff and students that are working on, let's call it a boots on the ground guidance document that has a scale of, when a teacher assigns an assignment, this is how they define the potential use or the expectations of use for students. That way, when an assignment gets turned in, there's an expectation about whether it's used at the beginning of the assignment, for the revising and editing part of the assignment, for the whole assignment. And then, it's clearly outlined in here the expectations of if there's a potential academic integrity issue, that we definitely engage in a responsible process to have conversations, figure it out, verify sources, and then move on if necessary. And that way, we can take a conservative but a responsible approach at, identifying any potential issues. And that's, I would say, probably a pretty broad overview of the elements of this policy. You'll see in the policy meeting, Strauss Esme has updated the plagiarism policy to call it academic integrity. So everything is starting to line up as we move through policies and they get updated. So any questions related to the acceptable use of AI?
I had and it may be because I'm the only non-educational staff on this committee. When I look at the two sections, the student and the teachers, it's very understandable that the teachers are going to be checking the students' work to make sure they're compliant. But when the same thing is applied to a teacher's lesson plan, or and I could read from the policy, the first point in the staff section, right, that they're prohibited from taking it as is. My question is, whose check is that? Is that the supervisor's check? Who's keeping an eye on that, on what the teachers are doing? Because everybody is using so much of AI these days, just to make life easier. So
yep, and that's a collective responsibility. So part of the teacher's responsibility is to submit lesson plans and submit plans, whether the unit plans. And sometimes it's a supervisor. Everybody's assigned a role and a responsibility, but sometimes it's a supervisor, and that's particularly at the high school level. And then it filters into the middle school. At the elementary level, the building principals are screening lesson plans. So that's where the initial kind of conversation would happen. And then, as we move through and get AI specific, we can further define, it may need to be addressed more than a monthly, because a non-tenured teacher submits lesson plans twice a month. A tenured teacher submits them once a month. Something that with AI may need to be occurring more frequently. So having a pathway defined for a teacher to, and it's obvious they can come to any of us, but we will clearly define, if you come up with something tonight and you want to use it in the next couple of days, who do you go to? Who's your go-to person? Again, it's probably the supervisor at the high school and or a VP or the principal. At the elementary level, it's going to be the principal, because they're probably the one that's in the building every day. But we do have our supervisors that are filtering through, but we'll define that, clearly as we roll out the documents.
And I guess the reason I asked this question is because, from the very advent of AI, the teachers have been on the guard and they've been doing all, whatever is in the first part of the policy, the teachers have been on top of it. And now we're kind of putting it in policies to the teachers. But I don't believe, or maybe it has been done, but I don't believe the supervisors and, curriculum writers, and they've been so closely involved in checking teachers' work. But now that we put a policy in place and it's really mirroring everything that the student is supposed to do, the staff is also supposed to abide by the same guidelines. So I think we might be looking at putting those processes in place as soon as this policy is out there.
Yep, and some of the things that are in there are expectations regardless. We would not want a staff member or a student to pass things off on their own. That's not their own. So whether it's, 20 years ago, photocopying an encyclopedia and trying to pass it off on your own, or now it's AI. Again, we've talked about this a little bit as AI moves through. This is the new topic right now. It's going to be part of what we do, right? We probably eventually wouldn't need an AI policy because it's going to be embedded in everything else we do, just like plagiarism and copywriting and those expectations. So we're highlighting it now, but it's going to be a part. It's going to be a resource. It's going to be a tool. And like I said, a lot of these expectations they're already out there for other things that exist. Like we said, we have expectations that resources, if they're going to be taken from somewhere, they're cited, whether you're a teacher or a student, and the same expectation applies. And now if it's an AI resource, just cite it as you're using this and it's AI generated, but make sure you verify it, make sure it's a vetted tool and a vetted source.
That does make sense. The other comment I had, Dr. Lehman, was this is definitely a much more concise and tighter policy document than the original draft that we saw last month. One of the things that I really liked in that draft, the old draft, was the rubric, a mention of the rubric. And I know it doesn't need to be in the policy and probably just a process, but that idea was really nice of the teachers incorporating that into their rubrics. I don't know if that has been completely taken off from the table, or it's just been taken off the policy, but it's probably going to be procedural.
It's a procedural piece. Everything from a rubric of expectations and guidance for how a student may use AI, from nothing to all in or anything in between, all the way through, like you mentioned, maybe AI use is embedded in a rubric that's a scoring rubric for the assignment. But that's, again, it's a procedural thing. It's a class subject dependent piece.
Anybody else, any questions? I don't have any more on the AI policy. Well, seeing none, Dr. Lehman, I think this is good to go on to the policy committee. Carmen, this will come to you, I guess. We can move on to the next policy.
You want me to go over the structural changes of this? Because we did mention.
Sure. Why don't you go over it? And I did read over it and I had some concerns, but why don't you start, Dr. Lehman, and then I'll bring my concerns up.
Yep. So we had mentioned the last time we got together that the elementary, middle, and high school needed to make sure we were aligned with practice. This clearly hadn't been updated since a while ago. But in doing so, we had, at the time it was written, grades 5 and 6 were still a part of the elementary school. So what we did is we restructured this a little bit to be more in line with what the practicality of our kind of grade level alignments are. So there's a grade 5 section, a grade 6-8 section, and then a grade 9 through 12 section. The upper elementary principals put into practice and clarified what's actually happening in 5th grade. The middle school principal defined the 6th through 8th grade piece. And then, we have clear expectations about what the practice was from the high school. So, as we move through, you can actually see the progression in terms of accelerated courses at the elementary level have a window of a grade level you can get. It's a 10% window, then it's a 5% window at the middle school level, and then that fades away at the high school level. So there's actually a progression moving through, and that was the actual practice in place. But this reflects all the actual things that are happening in terms of principals list and honor roll. At some point, we probably will revisit the National Honor Society piece. The high school wants to revisit that. This reflects the practice, but we may have a conversation in the future about what that looks like moving forward.
So I'll start with one thing that in the honors roll for grade 6 to 8.
Yep.
No, sorry, in the high school. The honor roll in the high school. I feel like there's a redundancy here. If you look at the second sentence, if a pupil receives a grade less than 75%, or if more than one grade is in 75 to, oh, sorry, I misunderstood. No questions there.
Yep. So you can get one grade between 75 and 79, but nothing below 75.
Okay. That's for the honor roll.
Yep.
And if there are 2 grades between 75 and 79, then that automatically takes them off.
if there's two grades between 75 or 79, or any grade, even just one
Right.
below 70, below 75, you're off as well. Yep.
The other thing in the academic awards, where it mentions the valedictorian, the salutatorian, the it doesn't mention here for ranking purposes. It doesn't mention the weighted GPAs. That's typically how we're taking it, right?
So the weighted GPA, yes. Yep.
And how is the honor society is not weighted GPA. It
Correct.
is also, it says weighted cumulative average of 90. So I feel like there should be a mention in the valedictorian, salutatorian also of the weighted GPA.
Yeah, I'll bring that back to Dr. Higgins. And I agree with you. The
It is
more
because it is-
explicit, right? The more explicit we can be, the less
And-
ambiguity there is in this policy.
And the thing that I disagree with, Dr. Lehman, and I brought it to you a few times, and I'm going to say it again tonight because so the old policy, which was modified, did say that a higher rigor of classes, it just said honors, it didn't say honors and AP, but it said in high school, 85 and above should make the principal's list. I see that in this modified policy that has been taken out. I don't agree with that. So if we are going to and I know you just said 10 and then 5, 10 in 5th grade and then 5% less in 6th to 8th grade. But I don't see the logic behind when we're giving the National Honor Society it's weighted, when we're giving the class ranks it's weighted. Why are we not doing the same? And I understand that weighted averages are not calculated for every subject in every marking period, but that's an additional step to honoring more students for their achievement. We are we're sort of discouraging these students because what is the principal's list? It's basically, you're trying to say that, all right, these kids have worked hard and gotten good grades. If you are not, equating the playing field for regular rigor and higher rigor courses for the principal's list, then meeting a principal's list is harder than making National Honor Society, in my opinion. I feel like it's just, you've had these kids in honors and AP classes whose parents have come to us in the last year, where they may have missed in one subject and had 87 in maybe an AP bio class and did not make the principal. AP bio is hard. They tell you in back to school night that don't expect 90s in this class. Teachers say that. So I understand, I have kids who've taken higher rigor courses. It's hard to meet. The kids only talk in weighted averages. They don't even talk about these higher rigor classes. They'll tell you they got an 80, but then the very next second they'll tell you what the weighted, GPA for that class is. So why are we excluding? And I understand I had heard the last committee meeting, policy committee meeting, where Dr. Higgins said no schools nearby do that. But that shouldn't stop us from doing it. It's an internal policy. It's what we choose to do as a school. And I don't feel that it is right that we are allowing for it in 5th grade. We are allowing it in 6th to 8th grade. And we were allowing it as per policy in high school, but we were just not procedurally following it. That's been the policy in the document, written policy forever, but we were not following it. And so now we're taking it out. I think the order is opposite. We should fix our processes, not stop honoring the students. And back when this policy was written, there were very few students compared to the number of students today taking those AP and honor classes. So what that means in my mind is we're honoring fewer students in principal's list than we actually can. And the whole purpose is encouragement for their hard work. So we're saying you take a higher rigor class, so you don't deserve that encouragement. You don't deserve to be in the principal's list because you're taking a higher level of the class. And then that student becomes a valedictorian. That student becomes a salutatorian. So what was the principal's list worth? So that's my opinion. I do not think we should be changing that part of the policy at all. And I welcome comments from anybody else on this committee, not just board members, but even supervisors. Please feel free to share your thoughts on this. But I strongly feel that we should give principal's lists to kids with higher rigor classes.
Can I just ask what the logic is with not keeping it consistent, whether it is to make all the same where we count the 85s and above, or remove them from the lower level as well? Like, I just want to understand what the logic is.
In terms of the difference between say,
Yeah, like
accelerated
for
math at the
example, why
elementary.
for 6th to 8th grade and 5th grade, we're allowing, a grade of 85 to 89, but not at the high school. Like, we either allow it across all the grades or don't allow it across all the grades.
Yeah, I think, you could look at it as students for a similar reason that we're not having an honor roll or principals list in 4th grade, right? That's the first year they're getting grades as opposed to the standard-based report card. So as they move through the grades meaning 5th through 8th grade, progressively, the standard is when you're getting tracked into a course, a more rigorous course, those are the courses that either you're stretching yourself to take and or your baseline, right? You should be in those classes. So for you to achieve, say, the 90 would be consistent to a student in a dynamics class achieving a 90 in their class, right? So it's an equal playing field as opposed to changing the bar for a higher rigor course. If we had that same thought, we would have to maybe change the bar for the dynamics classes because make it easier for them to get, so it's the principals list is the common standard of 90. And that seems to be the conversation that's been kind of going around. I know Dr. Chanley and I have had that. You heard Dr. Higgins speak about it. Dr. Catelli went at one of the previous meetings. So that's kind of maybe the thought process behind it. Ghazal, I wanted to address the Honor Society piece. And again, I mentioned the high school's looking to potentially revisit that. And that is something we're gonna look at moving forward. And they've been their advisors and the teacher advisors and things. They've been looking at the structure of the Honor Society and the student profile and the student body that's engaged in that. So stay tuned for that discussion. I think we may bring some thoughts to potentially continue to align things as well. So you might see that come up in the next couple months.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have something I just noticed. It's just in the language under where it says honor rolls grade 9 to 12. Letter B, it says the honor roll will include all pupils who have a grade of 80 or better in all subjects, weighted or unweighted, excluding those pupils named to the high honor roll. We don't have high honor roll, correct? That should be principals
list. Yep.
So that we have to correct.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. It should say principals list because that's what even middle school has, right?
Okay. No, I'll just make a note for policy.
So,
but anybody else feels?
I just have
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just trying to digest everything I'm hearing plus what I read, and unfortunately I don't have that in front of me. So please bear with me. The thinking when you look at 5th grade, the honors piece, you have 70 to 79%. Any kid that scores within that range would then be a candidate for the honors program. Am I correct so far? Because
honor roll, yes, honor 75 to 75.
Okay, right. And then as they start to move up the grade levels, the expectation becomes greater in that it becomes more difficult for them to achieve and be part of the honors roll, correct?
Yes,
right.
Yes, you're right.
And I think that's the way to go personally. I think that's appropriate. Why do I think that way? Because my experience has been that whenever I identified kids for inclusion into, let's say, a gifted math program that was taught by a very, very good math teacher who really had experience with gifted kids, and it was both an accelerated and an enrichment program. We found that kids at the lower level, I'm talking 3rd or 4th grade, you didn't get a lot of kids into that program. But as they matured, as their mathematics they become more mature, and for some reason, it could be, there could be a multitude of rationale behind it. They somehow develop the math skills. They become more adept in doing better in math. At some time, they just do better. And then when a kid in high school, and I think the high school is right on target. I think at high school, once, at a particular grade, sometimes you'll take a course and you might miss it by 1 percentile. Well, the standards are the standards. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I see the standards is if those are the standards, then that's it. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's part of life. I mean, I know, but you got to have some standards, and you got to hang within those standards, from my perspective, at least.
Agree, Charlie. So here's my argument to that. So when we give the valedictorian or the salutatorian for the year, it's their weighted GPA that's ranking them, right?
Mhm.
Now, the reason I even brought this discussion up is I personally know of these students whose parents have come and complained in the last year. The student had 5 AP classes.
Mhm.
And of the 5 AP classes, if there was bound to be, these are really hard, challenging classes,
Mhm.
and these supervisors will agree. Some of these classes, it's hard to get over 90. These students are not making the principal's list, but these students are the top 1% of our high school in terms of class rankings. So they miss because they miss in one marking period. They probably have a weighted 90, but they have 80, 82, 85.
Right.
These students are smart students. These are students that eventually are getting us pride outside of our high school. They're going to great colleges. They're, top 1%, but we're not putting them on the principal's list. So that's the whole argument here. Why are we not putting them on the principal's list when they are our pride? And trust me, I'm not talking about my kids. My kids don't meet that standard.
Right.
I am talking about these kids whose parents have come and complained in the last year. And it's just, and I honestly thought our policy was 90 and above till I read the policy document last summer and realized our policy says 85 and over should be in the principal's list, and we were not following the policy. So, and that's why I don't want to go back on that part. I feel like that policy was right and we should follow that policy. But Dr. Shanley, did you have any comments on that? Sorry, go ahead, Katie.
No,
Yeah,
that's
go ahead.
okay. So I agree with you and Carmen. I also understand what Charlie is saying also, but I believe that principal's list should be 90 or above. That's my stance. But I have mixed feelings on this 79, 75 aspect for honor roll, but I do feel like there needs to be uniformity across the policy. I feel like we set a standard and then we change the standard. So this is where I understand what Charlie is saying. Like as we go through, as the kids get older, we want to try to, make them, challenge them a little bit more to, do better. But we've also set the precedent that this was okay before and now it's not enough. So yeah, I have very mixed feelings about this. I
agree with, if you're not going to give it to high schoolers, stop giving them this from 5th grade onwards. Let's just make a standard policy. But honestly, my pet peeve right now is, they're taking really high rigor classes and they're eventually the kids that are our top 1% of the high school. Why are we not giving them the principal's list? What does the principal's list mean if it's not going to, honor the best students? So that's my pick on that. I may be wrong in the 1%. They may be the top 10% of the high school, but even top 10% is, is students that are going to great colleges. And when they write their, college application, they take pride in writing that. Was in the principal list 4 years of high school. No, they can't write that.
What do the supervisors think? What have you guys?
I would be
I'd
happy
like
to
to hear.
interject, but I can let the supervisor speak first.
I was going to share that I think we have to think about the culture that we want to create around grades and learning as well. And when we're pursuing accolades at the sacrifice of potentially academic integrity, our children's mental health, their ability to participate in extracurricular activities successfully, to have work or things like that. So for me, it's a little bit bigger than just this. But the other thing is, and having worked in high school my entire career in education, putting principals list, putting honor roll and things like that on a college application, it doesn't mean anything.
Mhm.
So you can put it on your college application, but at the end of the day, it's going to be GPA,
Yeah.
it's going to be test scores, it's going to be those things that also separate those students from their peers. Are they earning the seal of biliteracy? Little seal of biliteracy plug there. Are they interning at different places? Is there volunteer work or community work? So I think when we hyper focus on some of these things, is there a sacrifice to the culture of learning that we want to create? That's my only input.
I can give a little bit of insight to having gone through 3 sets of college applications and running around from college to college. As Kelly said, the colleges don't ask, and they honestly don't know or care if you're on principal's list or honor roll list or not. They don't even care how we weight them, because they take the weighting and they take your transcript and they isolate it and they do it their own way. And that's because there would be inequity within the schools. We may add 10 points to an AP class, another school might offer 5. They look at the course and they look at the rigor of what you're taking, and then they look at your grade. Having been in Monroe, since we were a farm school moving up, the one thing that I did love about our system when we were really trying to get students to try to want to achieve better, there were standards that they had, but if somebody had a 79, but they had an 85 first marking period, we weren't focused so much on each marking period, but say, hey, look, when you're averaging the 2, you're in that 80 still, and you keep it up marking period 3 and 4, and it's the end result we're looking at. And I think we need to get the kids to be like, okay, I tried my hardest. I did. Maybe I didn't do so great on one test and it pulled me down, but life goes on. I can pick up the pieces. I can learn what I didn't know, and I can move on. And I've had so many parent conversations over the last 4 or 5 years where a student has struggled, but they belong in the course, but they've struggled on a particular unit or a particular chapter. And the parents are more the ones that are feeling like life is over. It's horrible. How can they have that one grade on their report card that's not even going to show up in the end for the colleges? And I worry about what expectations we're giving them when they go off to college. And then they do take a test and they do poorly on that test. And the piece that I taught my kids was, if they didn't do as well as they wanted to in one thing, I said, okay, life goes on. What are we going to do next? What's the worst that could happen? The very worst that could happen is that you fail a class, which didn't happen with my kids, thank God, but that's the worst. You pick up the pieces and you move on. In life, we have some things that are failures, some things that are good. And I think we have to kind of look at that. If we're giving 75, 80, 90% of the kids in elementary school honor roll and above, what does it mean? I'm not sure if it's meaning anything at that point. I know that 85 for the advanced classes from middle school, I didn't even know we had it at the elementary, I'm going to be honest with you, but the 85 for the middle school was because with the Algebra 1, when we had that initially, or the accelerated math, they are in harder classes and there is a lot more rigor. So they don't really weight the grades. They were just saying one grade could be lower than the other. So it was kind of an unofficial weight, I guess. Dr. Chandler, you were there with that. I thought that was a good reason. High school, they're actually weighting the grades, so it kind of offsets it already. But
they're not weighting the grades. That's my point, Ms. Gasco. For the principals list, they're not weighting the grades. So the principals list is on the grade.
What level are you talking about? In the high school or the middle school?
The high school. The high school. If you got a 80 in AP Calc AB, it stays an 80. It's not 85. It stays an 85. So you won't make the principals list. That's the point here. And while I agree with Dr. Roselle on the cultural piece, we don't want to not challenge our students, but to the point that you just said and what Dr. Lehman said earlier, playing this, we're giving them an even playing field. So I understand, how these students have to write the brag list. Not everybody is into that. So they have to put 10 things on their brag list. On their Common App, they've got to put like 10 on accomplishments and achievements. I've gone through 2 college applications too. So I know there are students, I didn't have to face that in my house, but I know there are students that are looking for that last bullet. And that last bullet could be made principal list 4 years in a row. It may not mean something to everybody, but it does mean something to somebody. And I'm just saying this because we are giving them benefit of weighted GPAs for our class ranks, for the National Honor Society. We're just not doing it for the principals list. So to Katie's point, make it an even playing field, like elementary to high school, everything's the same. Why are we giving them undue advantage? And the same thing with National Honor Society and valedictorian, salutatorian, and the principals list. Why is principals list harder to get into than becoming a valedictorian? Right? Why are we using different standards for the 2 things? Is my question here. Either we just do away with the principals list. We say there's no principals list. Or if you're going to have a principals list, then just do it the way we do it for everything else with honors and AP classes. Consider the weighted GPA. And I'm all with you on, parents sometimes stressing more than the students, but I have, noticed, and more so in the last 4 or 5 years, the Monroe student demographic has changed, and they are really stressing over these grades and these report cards, and it's the way it is. It's become so competitive. Everybody wants to go to really good colleges, and they're pushing themselves. It's not like the principal's list is going to make them push themselves. I'm just talking about honoring a student that has already put in the hard work. I'm not talking about giving them an easy way out or awarding them for something that they've not done. I'm saying they're already doing it. They're already meeting our benchmark. Sorry, Dr. Shanley, you were going to say something.
That's fine. It was good to hear everybody's thoughts. So I think we're talking about 2 different things here. I think on the one hand, I agree that the academic rigor, if a child is capable of being in an AP or an honors class, they should be held to a higher standard than a child who is not capable. And therefore, in that vein, I would say it should not be added, weighted for principal list. However, you said something very telling, Ghazala. If our elites and our best, who are summa cum laude, magna cum laude, getting into the elite schools, having the highest rank, highest GPA, are being excluded from principals list because of the way we do a calculation, that is something that does not align. So from a philosophical, educational point of view, I agree 100%. You're smarter, you should be held to a higher standard. That's what differentiation is. What we do for one child, we don't always do for the same for another child, because every child in a class can't walk, something as simplistic as, well, why did I have different work than Joey? You had different work from Joey because you worry about your own work and Joey worries about his work. And that is absolutely true. So if we go from that mindset, then I would say that there should not be any additional weight. However, we weight everything. We give additional weight for everything. So if we're going to give additional weight for everything, after hearing the way you said it, that means that our elite child, who's now going to the elite college, who now, like Dr. Roselle said, maybe it doesn't make a difference, you don't need it on your resume. It doesn't make a difference. It may not make a difference, but that should be an automatic. Why are they not getting principals list when they're getting everything else? So I think that if we're going to keep principals list, and we don't have to, if we're going to keep it, it should be calculated exactly like everything else. I have to be quite frank with you. When I originally sat down with Dr. Higgins and Dr. Lehman, I was in agreement with them 100%. But after listening to what was brought out here and listening to what you said, Ghazala, it's not about making it easier for the child to achieve it. It's about the playing field. Either we say nothing should be weighted. You're smarter than your colleague, than your peer, so you take a harder class, so the expectation you should get a higher grade. I agree. But if we're going to weight it then for every other accolade, why are we not weighting it for this? So that's how I would sum it up. From listening to this, I did change my opinion, because I think it's absurd that perhaps number 1 in our class is not principal's list. It makes no sense.
And honestly, I haven't met a single high schooler that doesn't talk about their grades in weighted averages. They don't Anybody taking a higher rigor of course will only tell you their weighted average.
So just listening to everybody's insight, which I think it just proves that this committee does make sense, is, and I respectfully did have a conversation with Dr. Higgins and Dr. Critelli and Dr. Lehman, and based upon the original conversation is, I do think it should be 90, but now that I'm listening, we weight everything else. How do we not weight that?
And
It's erroneous.
how was it in the policy before? Why was it in the policy before?
That I don't know. That was way before, way before me.
For a reason. I feel it was there for a reason, and it only mentioned honors. It didn't mention AP,
which was an error because you should have both.
Right, but we've been offering more and more AP classes in the last decade, and Mr. Moralda can give me a number for that. But I'm sure 10 years ago, our number of AP offerings were less than the number, and number of students taking it were also less 10 years ago than they are today. So it's a bigger subset of students that are not going to meet that 90, but they are smart students. They are putting in a lot of hard work, and they are getting into the National Honor Society. They are getting the top 10% rank.
They're not making principals list.
They're not making principals lists.
So then I think we should either we weight everything, which we do, or we weight nothing.
And in all fairness, I understand, because I also asked around, our neighboring schools are all doing the same thing. It's 90 and above. Everybody's doing the same thing. I don't think everybody doing the same thing is the right thing. Sometimes you've got to be the first one to make a change, and change is always hard. But our policy was like that. So I don't want to backtrack on the right policy. I felt like our policy when it came to high school was right. But I also agree with Carmen and Katie that whatever we do, it needs to be, so if we change high school one, then we can keep the one right now for for 5th grade and 6th through 8. But if we end up keeping the high school at 90, everybody should be 90. But I honestly would like us to keep it the way it was, the high school. 85 and above should get the principals list for honors and AP classes. I think we're over time, well over time.
So Dr. Chanley.
No, we have until 7.
Dr. Chanley, we'll bring this back to Dr. Higgins and.
Yes, I do. And I think the conversation is, it's not about the grade. This is about the fact that we weight, not weight as a weight, but we weight WIGHC, we weight everything else. So it doesn't, there's no, we have to be consistent. If we're going to weight National Honor Society and we weight the rank and we weight everything else, then we need to weight this too, because the one thing I can't live with is how our mostly children academically are not principals list. That makes no sense.
So Dr. Chandy, I think the logistical challenge is this, that every marking period does not, the report cards don't have weighted averages. So for every marking period, they just have their, they have whatever they got, but their final report card has the weighted average. That's how the school does it, right? While every student is calculating his or her own.
They know how to do it. The kids know how to do it better than the adults. Yeah.
And I think that's a challenge that we would have to face if we decide to follow the policy as it was before this change was made.
All right. So maybe there's a way around that, but let's have a conversation with Dr. Higgins. But I think it's, like I said, it's twofold here. Personally, I think academically, you don't have. Who says we have to weight anything? If you have the ability to do this class, then you should have this class. And if you have an 85, you have an 85. But we do weight it. So if we do weight it, everything should be weighted. It's a whole other conversation.
So this will go back to Dr. Higgins. It won't move to policy.
Yes, I feel it should.
Okay.
But also, our policy currently is 85 and over, but we just finished a marking period. I don't know what happened this time also, but we're not following the policy. And Dr. Chanley, that is been going on for over a year since this was made, this was made public by a parent. Yes. We've been doing something that's not on our policy.
So are you saying that we are not, that what we have on paper in essence is not being followed?
Yes. So Charlie, what's going on? What our current policy says, in high school, 85 or over in honors classes should get the principals list. And that has been our policy the policy document for a long time. A parent, and I brought this up.
But that's on the current policy, is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's on the current policy, but the high school is not being following it. The high school is only being given to the principals list to students 90 and above. And the parents have brought up a complaint. There's a written complaint and email that
So-
me and Dr. Lehman have been talking about since last summer. So it's been a long time.
So the
But there
90,
are-
I'm sorry, so the 90 and above is what is currently on what we're recommending, what's being recommended now,
Yes,
right?
what is
Correct?
yes, what is that the draft today is saying 19 and above. What is actually
I'm trying to recall, I don't have it in front of me, so
no, that's all right.
I want to
So-
make sure I understand it.
The live policy on our board docs says 85 and over. And the recommendation from the administration is to change that to 90 and over. And I'm resisting that recommendation. I don't think that is fair.
But ultimately, and I know Ghazali, you'll agree with this, whatever our policy currently is what we should be following.
So right now
Yes,
we are,
we should
yeah,
be
we are
following
in
our current
violation.
policy.
Yes, as per, and the parent has already complained about it.
So
So
we are
we-
following the policy.
Yeah, we are in violation.
No, we're
of-
violating
No, we're
it.
not following the policy. We're not following the policy right now.
And that's why this was needed, that we tackle this right away. But I don't think we've come to a conclusion yet. And so I don't know how we can, direct the high school administration.
I tell you,
Ultimately,
I think we're
this is
making
gonna go back for discussion, right, with
I-
Dr. Higgins.
I understand, okay, I understand that. And I just think we're making a bigger deal out of this than we should. Number one. Number two, I'm in agreement with the supervisors. I think they're right on target. I have to be very honest with you. I just think what colleges are looking at, and I agree with them, they're not looking at that stuff. They're looking at other things. So I'm not going to repeat them because it's just not necessary. But I just have very mixed feelings about the whole thing. I'll be quite honest with you. But I think the supervisors hit it right on target. I really do, as far as I'm concerned. So
I don't disagree with you, Charlie, either, but since the policy is how it is currently and there hasn't
understand.
been a revision to it,
okay,
we need to make sure that our current policy is followed until the policy changes are put into place. So
Okay.
right now we have to make sure that current policy is followed, but this is why we're having the discussion now to change the policy in some form or fashion, and then make sure that it's followed going forward.
okay.
To summarize this discussion, Dr. Lehman, we are also going to revisit the little change. High honor roll needs to be called principal's list for middle school. We're going to revisit high school, and based on that discussion, we either standardize. If high school does not budge from 90, then everything becomes, the same. We shouldn't have separate, standards for middle school and elementary school. And if high school changes, then we could keep what we have right now for 5th grade and 6th grade also. Right? Is that a good?
That's a summary. That's the feedback we'll take to the principals.
Okay.
And we'll bring this back. Yep.
Okay. Wonderful. I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
Dr. Lehman.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Stay warm.
Okay.
And that's for
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Ghazala. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you.
Let me get out of here.